Good morning. This hearing is called to order. This is a public hearing of the Appropriations Committee on Bill number 150612. My name is W. Wilson Good Jr., Chair of the committee. I note that the quorum is present. Council President Darrell Clark is present, along with committee members Jannie Blackwell, Bobby Heenan, and Blondell Reynolds Brown. The title of the bill 150612, authorizing transfers and appropriations for fiscal year 2016 within the general fund from the City Council to the Director of Finance, contribution to the school district. The purpose of this hearing is to act upon an agreement that was done also pursuant to a resolution passed by City Council in June. That agreement has been executed, so we will move from our public hearing directly into a meeting and then return to the public hearing. And the chair recognizes Councilman Blackwell for a motion on Bill 150612.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Bill 150612 be reported out of committee with the favorable recommendation and also a recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Bill number 150612 is reported out of this committee with favorable recommendation, suspension of the rules to allow first reading at our next council session. We now move back into our public hearing. Our first witness is Dr. Hite.
Good morning, Chairman Good, Council President Clark, members of the City Council Committee on Appropriations. I'm Bill Hite, Superintendent, School District of Philadelphia, and here to speak on Bill 150612. I want to thank City Council for the opportunity to provide testimony today and for Council's continued willingness to champion Philadelphia students and schools. Over the past 5 years, City Council has supported providing more than $300 million in additional revenue to the public schools. Our current year budget reflects an additional $70 million in local revenue, including the $25 million in real estate tax revenue that is subject of today's transfer ordinance hearing. The additional local resources City Council has supported have been essential in stabilizing their school system and beginning the deep work needed to rebuild. Without the additional local support for the current fiscal year, we would not have been able to maintain current programs and services. By stepping up with critical, sustainable resources, City Council is helping to address the school district's structural deficit. Along with City Council members and stakeholders across the city and state, we continue to advocate for a state budget that provides significant additional education funding to Philadelphia and to school districts across Pennsylvania. We have detailed plans, primarily developed by principals and their teams, for how to use the additional resources we are seeking from the state. The additional state funds will allow schools to offer and expand important academic and social emotional programs and resources that support student learning. These are things such as art, music, advanced placement, and credit recovery courses, supports for more counseling, nursing services, and tutoring programs and instructional coaches. State resources will also support providing teachers with resources for instruction, including up-to-date curriculum materials, books, and technology. We remain optimistic that the governor and legislature will come to agreement on a state budget that reflects the high priority citizens in this city and across Pennsylvania place on public education and their schools. With your help, we have steadied the financial situation of the district, and we have much more to do to achieve our overarching goal, that is ensuring that all children have a great public school close to where they live. We are addressing long-standing systemic issues and building momentum in our public schools, both district-run and charter-run. We know it will take time and a collective effort to build a system of great schools across Philadelphia. For that reason, I'm especially encouraged about the cooperation agreement the school district, school reform commission, and city council signed last week. Thank you for your ongoing support. I'm happy to answer any questions from committee members.
Thank you for your testimony, Dr. Hite. The chair recognizes Council President Clark for comments and/or questions.
Push the middle button. Push the middle one.
Middle? There you go. All right. Rookie status. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Dr. Hite, thank you for your continued service to the children of the city of Philadelphia and your commitment as a public servant. Probably one of the most significant roles that one can play is educating our young people. And I want to thank Commissioner Neff in addition to, and you've been doing a good job, Commissioner, as the chair. As you referenced in your testimony, and again, I want to thank all the participants in pulling together the document that allowed us to create the intergovernmental cooperation agreement. I think it is clearly creates a blueprint for us to move forward in an accurate, transparent, and participatory way, unprecedented, particularly as it relates to the ability for this legislative body to be a part of ensuring that from a fiscal side, we are at a level that we won't have the annual school crisis as it relates to funding. And I want to thank you so much for being a signatory to that, along with my colleague, Councilwoman Blackwell. But the simple matter is that it is just that. It is a start. And we don't want anybody to think that somehow we signed a document, everything's going to be okay. Right. We will be moving quickly into formalizing not only that document, but the process to ensure that individuals, not just in this legislative body, but the public at large, and I want to thank you again for indicating that you will, in fact, make those documents public, so it gives everybody a sense of what's going on from a fiscal perspective. Clearly, the first thing that we need to do, separate and aside from this $25 million, is talk about the structural challenges associated with the school district that were not created by any of you all. The predecessors created a level of debt that was, frankly speaking, put us in a significant hole. And I think we need to aggressively move towards addressing that, both the state and the city. There are other issues, as you can recall, in the conclusion of the budget hearing that were, at least from our perspective, left somewhat unresolved with respects to the operational side, which is not a part of the agreement that we signed, but we continue to have concerns as it relates to the workforce and the proposed privatization of some of that workforce. Clearly, and I think everyone would acknowledge that on the substitute teachers, we did not end up in a place that any of us were comfortable with, and that continues to be a problem. We know that the issue with respects to the nurses is still out there. At some point, we will get to some conclusion on that. But again, as we indicated at that point, we did have some significant reservations about that. And there are a couple of other issues which I referenced at the signing. I believe in order to have the level of consistency and sustainability, got to get a contract. Yeah. All right, got to get a contract, because we need to understand what the baseline expenditures are, and that will be determined by the contract between the administration and its workforce. And the sooner, frankly speaking, we get that, the better. And not only will it, from a fiscal perspective, but in terms of having a working relationship with the workers that one should have. And, we've had our own 5-year dust up on the city level for quite a number of years, and it created the level of acrimony that none of us felt good about. Unfortunately, we ultimately got a contract, and I see it's reflected in this municipal workforce willingness and interest in continuing to provide the services. The second thing is our aggressive push towards community schools. I think that it's clear that all the work that these members have done in putting together a document that puts us in a position that the first response to a challenge will not be to stick our hands in the taxpayers' pockets, because there are opportunities for external resources that will enhance our ability to have the appropriate healthcare services and teacher development and all of the things that I want to commend the presidents of the 3 universities, largest universities, I don't want to say major, for participating in a substantive conversation and making a informal commitment to ensuring that we do that. So we look forward. From my personal perspective, I won't get into a significant number of detailed conversations today about the issues that we raised over the last budget hearing, because now we are after signing that document, we now can get to the nuts and bolts of the fiscal challenges that are faced with the school district, and will be an integral part of coming up with a resolution to those. All right. So I just want to thank you for your participation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Blackwell.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dr. Hite, as you know, we will have a resolution heard on the 21st where we'll ask a lot of these same issues. So all that we know today is appropriations, and we're talking about this money transfer, but all these other issues, many of which the President just referenced, I'm sure will be asked again, and we'll submit them again on the 21st. So you get another chance to respond. Thank you.
Councilman Reynolds Brown.
Yes, good morning. I want to salute you as well, Dr. Hite, for working closely with President Clark and creating really another milestone in the relationship between the school district and the President's office. And I've been informed by the President's staff, and I understand that the regular briefings that we will receive will be primarily focused on the academic, educational aspects of the district. I don't want the opportunity to go past, however, and alerting you that I and other members of this body also want to know in detail. Let me say this. Typically, it is during school district budget hearings that we get to the guts of detail around the business side of the operation. And so my hope is that during those quarterly sessions, we can also get greater detail on what's happening on the contracting RFP bidding process on the business side of the equation, and not wait just until showtime during budget hearings. Because there's the continuing, I won't go so far as to say it is a concern, but the questions still remain out in the Philadelphia community, and how well is the school district doing when it comes to giving women and people of color opportunity there at the school district. So in some way, shape, form, or fashion, in a way that's comfortable for you and your staff, we want details on that too on a quarterly basis. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Let me note for the record, Councilman Brian O'Neill is present as well. Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Dr. Hite, if you could stay around for about 10 minutes while we take a couple other witnesses, there may be some other questions that come up.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. Rob DeVoe.
Good morning, Chairman Good, members of the committee. I'm Rob Dubo, Director of Finance, and I'm here to testify in support of Bill number 150612. The bill proposes to transfer $25 million from City Council to the city's annual contribution to the school district. A portion of the projected increase in property tax from the rate increase enacted last spring was intended to come to the city and then be provided to the district. This transfer would make that possible. We support this action to provide additional recurring funding to the district. That concludes my very short testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeVoe. Any questions for Mr. DeVoe? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the vote was taken earlier, but I would like my vote to be recorded as aye as well. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Helen again.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much to the City Council Appropriations Committee, Chairman Wilson Good, in particular because I believe that the cooperation agreement and this hearing is one of the most encouraging signs of a new phase of productive budget oversight by City Council to ensure that students actually receive the basic services that they need, that we focus in on equity, particularly for our most vulnerable and traditionally marginalized youth, and real engagement of communities in this process. Thanks to the dogged work of some of our media, we are hearing firsthand about some of the serious consequences that happen to students and their learning when we may overstate or overassume the benefits of privatization. This does not mean, of course, that some contracting, limited and with due diligence on oversight, doesn't have its place. Of course it does. But in the last few years, we have seen a significant expansion of privatization that has had deeply troubling consequences that we're not tracking very well. I think that it's clear that the source for teacher substitute situation has been well documented, but the bigger concern is that 77 students in a classroom at Mastbaum, when I contacted the district, will not be relieved until October 19th, and school started on September 8th. It feels like that's a situation that is extremely urgent and serious, that schools shouldn't be left to fend for themselves or figure that out, that needs to be an immediate deployment, and that we need to be able to jump on that very clearly, and that we want the district to be on top of that and figure out how to support it. The nurses and counselors situation has also been well documented, but I also want to emphasize again that it is not getting any better, even after months and years of addressing this issue. I want to emphasize that this is not significant chunks of money that we're talking about. When the nurses moved from 1 to 750 student ratio to 1 to 1,500 student ratio, it was in the range of $5 to $7 million at the time in 2013. The school district recently testified that to get a counselor back in every school would be on the range of $3.7 million. This is certainly doable and necessary at this time. At a rally at Jackson Elementary School this week, it becomes immediately apparent that the basic lack of services in schools, the fact that there are 3 schools without even having a nurse assigned to them, that there are a nurse available to them, that there are 16 schools without nurses being assigned to them, is a major issue about whether parents even want to send their children to school, to a public school, and ultimately to live in Philadelphia and feel like it's safe for their young people. I feel like this is a doable situation, that if council is, this is the appropriate and necessary and much needed oversight body to start asking some of these questions. I want to make a quick pitch on something that hasn't been talked about very much, which is the rapid privatization around speech therapy and services around speech therapy. So there are about 130, there was formerly about a staff of 130 speech therapists serving 6,800 maybe students in the school district of Philadelphia. Now we're down to 60 school district therapists, and the rest are filled by a variety of contractors who, by the way, are expanding in terms of the number of contracts. There aren't just one contract. There's Progressive Therapy, Metascan, EBS. 20% of these contractors quit mid-year, and that there are 10 to 15 positions that may even be open in the district. But it's important for people and for all of us to start tracking and paying attention to these things, in part because at the end of the day, speech is a federally mandated service, and if kids are going without it, or if they are being interrupted, my own son had a significant speech impediment. He can't see multiple speech therapists in a year. This needs to be consistent. They need to track growth. We have an open site called myphillyschools.com, which is tracking complaints to about school services. We've received several dozen unsolicited complaints about lack of services in schools. So I just want to say that I want to see this as a partnership with the district, that we want to figure out solutions to this, but that it is extremely important with the limited amount of funds that we have, that we particularly laser in and focus in on the basic and essential services that are necessary, needed in schools. At the end of the day, federally mandated, state constitutionally required, and that as the district seeks to do other things, new initiatives that may not have existed before, the Renaissance Schools program, which costs $4,000 assumed more dollars per student in stranded costs that have never been justified or clarified, that we need to have more places, and that this cooperation agreement, and in particular that I look forward to working with City Council very carefully to ensure that our services are met and that Council's budget oversight and responsibility, fiscal responsibility to the children of the school district and to the city are well cared for. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, comments for this witness? Seeing none, is there anyone else to testify on this bill?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gilman, if you could please report back to the table. So, operating on the philosophy that you cannot hold people responsible for that which you have not brought to their attention, that's how I try to live. I assume you've registered your concerns, your observations with the school district in a way that lets them know, A, you're interested, B, you're concerned, and C, seeking to work through with them what those possible remedies could be?
Although I may not have directly raised the issue of the speech therapist, I know that that issue has been raised before. The nurses and counselors has been well documented, and I believe the source for teachers has been well documented. But in part, I do think that one of the things that we want to be able to do is have a better, as these, as complaints, for example, if we were to open up the complaint site a little bit more broadly, we would want to talk to the school district about that before we made anything public.
And we would be whom?
Well, the complaint site is independent. If it were to go under any other kind of body or entity, it would certainly not. And I didn't raise anything that we received through the complaint site publicly here, and won't unless I raise it with the district.
Okay, then. All right, then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments for this witness? No one else to testify? Seeing that, this concludes our public hearing and our public meeting. Thank you very much.